All right. Hello and welcome to another sales chat. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. I am joined by my colleague, as always, Martha Neumeister, who, although she has the Brooklyn Bridge in her background, she's actually in Vienna, Austria. She's just trying to pretend she's in New York. And and our special guest today, Anita Nielsen, who is in Chicago, Illinois. How you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and Anita is a sales performance consultant, over 20 years experience in B2B sales and support, an advocate for salespeople, and the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Beat the Bots: How Your Humanity Can Future-Proof Your Sales, Your Technology Sales Career. Okay, so congratulations on the book, Anita. That's fantastic. Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beat on the Bots. That keeps reminding me of the Ramones song, Beat on the Brat, but Beat on the Bots. I like it too.
Close. So, I didn't even thought of that, but now that's going to go in my brain too.
I know.
Very good.
As I was looking at your book, that's what I kept. That song just kept going around in my head. It's funny.
Oh, that's funny.
But I like it. Beat on the bots, or beat the bots.
Yeah. Beat 'em.
Okay, so that's what we're going to talk on today. It's Beat the Bots: How Your Humanity Can Future-Proof Your Tech Sales Career. I am, as always, in lovely San Diego, or as usually in lovely San Diego. And if you want to join in on the chat today, it's hashtag sales chats. So join in, comment, answer the questions, get engaged. Martha will be tracking the Twitter chat, and we love when people get engaged and when you get your own debates going. All right, so let's jump into it. It's an interesting subject, Anita. So value matters most in selling. So how can a salesperson use the power of personalized value in order to win better, bigger, more?
Yeah. So, great question. I think that one of the most important things that sales reps have to be able to do, and we talk about personalized value, is make the time to get to know the person to whom they're selling. So, and that means not just what they do in their role, but who they are as a person and what matters to them and what success looks like to them. So, personalized value is a way to differentiate. It's something that a lot of sellers forget, right? If you understand what the customer's needs are in their role, you can sell to that role. You can sell your product or technology. But what we're going to find, I think, going forward is it's going to be more about selling yourself and who you are as a sales professional. And the only way to do that is by creating that personal connection, by delivering personalized value.
So, okay, so somebody's listening, they're saying, okay, so delivering personalized value and getting to know the person. I mean, they say, okay, so maybe today on the one hand, it's a little easier because there's a lot more information out there about people. On the other hand, it's a little more difficult because it's kind of hard to get to the people, right? Because people
Right.
have put technology in the way. So how do you overcome the barriers that have been, the obstacles have been put in your way, and how do you leverage the information that you have in a positive way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, and one of the things I say in the book is, you want to do your research, you want to learn a lot about the prospects and the clients, but you don't want to get creepy, right? So
Yeah.
stalking is never okay. And so really it just means reach out to them, go to where they're at. I mean, if you know that they're active on Twitter, be on Twitter. If you know that they're active on LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn. At the same time, make sure that you are creating your brand on LinkedIn. So it's about humanizing yourself, really. People, it's harder to get to people for sure, but people always want to get to people. And so, for example, when you call into an airline and they
Mhm.
say, please say or type your loyalty number, everyone says agent, everyone says operator.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and everyone tries to hit 0 pound, whatever will work because they don't want to talk to that machine. There's some people that don't, like my husband. He's really good at actually going through that. But the majority of people, I think, really just want to work with a human being. And I think you just have to keep on trying till you get there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I love that. Is everybody shouting agent, customer service, and just
Exactly right.
keep going. I do not understand that input. Please try these
Exactly.
input. And let's face it, when you do put in your loyalty number, that when you do get through to an agent, what do they ask you for? Your loyalty number.
Your loyalty
Yeah.
number. Yeah. So it's flawed. It's flawed. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's a flaw. And I think the other thing, an interesting point too about this, the human element is, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were saying that one of the things that people overlook in B2B sales is they think that consumer sales is all emotion driven, right? And B2B sales is driven by practicalities, whereas B2B sales is driven by a lot of emotion too, because making business buying decisions, there's a lot riding on the person or persons who are making that decision, right?
That's right. Absolutely. And so one of the things I always coach my sales reps is, that person that you're speaking to, their reputation and their career is kind of on the line if they fail and if they make the bad decision. So you have to, by all means, I mean, before you can even get them to understand the value of your product, they have to understand the value of what it's going to be for their career, and they have to feel like there's not risk with that decision. So you have to be very clear on that emotional piece, because otherwise, no matter how great your product is or how wonderful your presentation is or how much follow-up you do, that person isn't going to buy. They're just too afraid to.
Yeah, and that's why I would say that the biggest competitor often is the no decision, because let's face it, it's safer to make no decision than it is to make a decision and then your name in that business is associated with, say you purchase a software, it's like, oh, that's the system Golden bought. Yeah, he's the one, to blame him for everything, right?
Exactly right.
So, getting back to the idea of humanizing, you're saying, like, what are some ways that you can humanize yourself in the sales process?
I think a lot of it is when you go into those initial meetings, don't be so stuffy. Don't be so uber professional that your customer gets into that mindset, right? In order to create a personal connection, your customer has to be in a mindset where they feel comfortable and they have an ability to care. So in order to get there, you have to go in there and be a human being. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be empathetic. The more you go in there, like, hey, hello, thank you for your time. People, that's commoditized. People say that. All people say that. Stuffy business people say that. Go in and be real. Be who you are, because that's who they're going to buy from. So one of the most important things is just be yourself, be vulnerable, be authentic, and that will get you a very long way. And one of the examples I have in the book is about somebody who, they go into a customer and they were late for a meeting. Well, instead of going in and saying something like, I apologize for the inconvenience, they go in and say something like, I'm sorry I'm late. I trusted Apple Maps and I don't know why it led me the wrong way. Now, first of all, that person that you're talking to, customer, you kind of disarm that situation, right? They know they have the same problem with Apple Maps as you do. So you've created a form of relating to them, and you've been real and vulnerable and authentic. And I think the majority of buyers respect that.
Yeah, and I think there's a balance though, because one of the other things that I've noticed, and it's an irritant certainly to me and to a lot of people, is people who've gone the complete opposite, the pendulum over here, where they're over casual and over familiar, and it's like, you don't know me, you haven't earned the right to be like that right now.
That's
And yeah,
right.
I appreciate somebody being open and being genuine, but it's not genuine when because I can't stand when I get the "Hey John" emails, or somebody, "Hey John, just want to talk to you. Hey, I think I can," and I'm like, who are you? Who are you
You don't
exactly?
know me. You don't know me.
So I
Yeah.
think there's a balancing act there, right?
Absolutely. It's a balancing act. And part of that is, you're going to do that in your research, that initial phone call that you have to set up that meeting. You just get a feel, try to sense where that customer's at and meet them there. And that's a skill that takes a long time to learn, right? So
Yeah.
this isn't something that's just easy to do. You have to be deliberate about it. You have to be very intentional in terms of learning what that customer needs to hear from you and what level of authentic you can be and what level of conversation you need to have.
Yeah, and I do think that I do think, unfortunately, a lot of people just adopt a mode and then just apply it to everybody. And as you say, we know that people are different, for goodness sake. But there's analytical buyers, there's emotional buyers, there's people who just want the bullet points. I mean, there's all different types of buyers. So you got to know your audience before and that's one of the things you got to uncover in the process, is what kind of buyers are these.
Yeah, what kind of buyers? And I think too, it's important. You do that from your research. You communicate with them in a clear, concise manner. You don't go in and start talking about your product and your company and show them the multi-logo slide. There is very little that's as annoying to a buyer than seeing that logo slide. Like, I don't care necessarily that you work with all those customers, but if you can tell me something that you've done for those customers that directly impacts what I need to do for my company, now we have something to talk about.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very important to know who your buyers are and what matters to them.
Yeah, and I do think that, I just pick up on that point, because I do think that that's the thing that I want to know from salespeople, right, is I want to know what you've done for other people. I want to get some insights. Let's face it, you probably worked with some of my competitors, and you're doing things that of great interest to me that there's no other way I could find out about it apart from through you. So
Exactly.
although me as a buyer has tons of information out there, there's still very, very valuable information and insights that you as a seller have that I can't get access to.
Exactly. And the sellers that have become very good at leveraging that insight that they have, that unique insight from their experiences with their customers, the ones that learn how to bring that into conversation, they are light years ahead of
Mhm.
others because now, again, they're talking to that customer at a level that directly impacts them. Back to what we said before. If you can show your customer that you've done this for 20 other customers before and you've helped them be successful, now that fear of their reputation and that fear
Mhm.
of getting fired, you're helping quell that, and that's the name of the game, is being able to get them comfortable and feel safe enough to buy from you.
Yeah. And just an important note on the flip side of that is be just as helpful after you get the sale, because there's nothing
Oh,
more. I always say chameleons are fantastic. If like they're pets, I know somebody who has one. They're really wonderful. You put them against different colors, they change color. It's great.
yes.
In a salesperson, chameleon, not so good, because I don't want to deal with somebody who's super helpful, very insightful, all of that. And the minute I sign on the dotted line, they're like, oh, you've got an issue, customer service.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think I say in the book as well is, you've got to be as genuine, authentic, have a servant mindset, even after the ink dries. That's
Mm.
one of my favorite phrases. You don't walk away because now what you've done is you've ultimately given the buyer so much buyer's remorse.
Mm.
You've now debilitated yourself from growing the account in the future and your company from being successful in that critical first 100 days.
Yeah, and I think you touch on a really good point there when you say the critical first 100 days, because I think sometimes people overlook, and certainly sellers overlook, that there's a buyer's remorse period, right? But there's always a period where things don't work exactly as you wanted them to immediately on something you bought. So then there's a little bit of panic, or there's a few problems, and that's when you really, really need to support the buyer, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're on your own after you've made a buying decision.
That's right. And if you and it's a great opportunity, right? I always say that in those challenges lies great opportunity to
Yeah.
differentiate yourself. So if there's a challenge, instead of letting your customer have to go through the customer service line and this, that, and the other to just try to get a solution, get in front of it. Find the
Mhm.
solution for them, bring it to them before they have a chance to sweat. Handle it and let them know that you did. And that's where that trust comes in. And I talk about customers for life. Those are the types of things you have to do for customers for life. You have to be their person and the trusted guide, advisor, advocate throughout the entire relationship, not just before sales.
Yeah, and that's what will get you the referral, but that's what, not just the referral if you ask for them, but that'll get you the advocacy when you don't even ask, when you're not in the room, right?
That's right. That's one of my favorite things is when you have a customer who is so say you're a customer and somebody in your team brings you a new vendor, but
Mhm.
you've got your person, your salesperson that is there for you. Now, me as that customer, I'm going to be arm's length with whoever is referring me to somebody else because I need to protect my person because my person protected me. My sales professional had my back. I don't want to hear about anybody else. And that's
Mhm.
another reason why it's so hard to compete sometimes because if you've got a sales professional already an incumbent that is at that level with your customer, you've got your work cut out for you.
For sure, for sure. So, just coming back to being able to connect and build rapport with people, right? So, a lot more selling is now going on online, and it's interesting. There's an interesting uh, change going on, because before, when first the ability to do online meetings and all of that came, it was seen largely as an advantage for the seller because you don't have to travel, you can do. But more and more buyers are preferring to actually engage that. Well, I had an experience recently where there was a customer prospect that was not too far away from one of our salesperson, and salesperson said, "Okay, hey, you're 50 miles up the road. I'll come out and see you." And it was like, "No, no, it's okay. We'll do the online meeting because it's more convenient to them." So what that does is it means that you now have a different medium through which you have to make those connections, and that raises its own challenges, right?
It does. And so I think video is an effective tool. And what I always say is that first couple meetings, be in front of your customer, because you have to do a lot of things. Like you have to understand their body language. You have to be able to hear what they're not saying. And you can't do that through video. But once you've established that relationship and you're able to get in front of them even once, then you can be more comfortable with video and you're not, now you know what you're dealing with. But it is really hard. And customers who say that, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, if they're not willing to make the time for me to meet them face to face, my spidey sense should be going off that, okay, I've got a lot of work to do with this customer and make sure that they understand that I am worthy of their time and coming in there and sitting down with them and make it about that.
Yeah, but I mean, it also depends on obviously on what you're selling. But it's
Yes.
people are getting more comfortable making buying decisions without ever sitting down or seeing the rep face to face, and it's just
That's
an
right.
interesting phenomena that's coming into it. What are some of the other things that you advise people in your book to do that can differentiate themselves from AI and bots and all these other things? Because we're getting all these dramatic, predictions like AI, machine learning, and salespeople will be redundant in the future, which is nonsense.
Yes.
But anyway, what's your
Yeah.
answer to that?
My answer is, as long as humans are doing the buying, I think that humans have the advantage in selling, right? So as long, we have the potential to create an advantage just by creating that human connection. Last time I checked, the robot can't have empathy. They can't have that genuine desire to help that customer succeed. These are very human things. And in the book, that's what I play on, is I help, I try to give the sales professionals a thought process on how to get to that level with their customer and differentiate. And I'll tell you, the funny thing is, you read, I don't even know how many sales books in my career, and almost always they have some sort of a methodology or an approach or a checklist. And the thing is, that might be interesting while you read the book, but I've rarely met any sales professionals who, even after like a training, actually use that. And so I look at it a little differently. To me, in order to get them to change their behavior and be successful, I have to influence how they think. And so this book is less about an approach, more about a thought process, and helping them through stories and through advice and guidance, showing them, this is all in you. What you need to beat the bots is in you. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. This is how you're going to get to it. This is what you're going to do in terms of the customer. This is what you have to ask yourself. And there is no checklist. I don't believe in that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, the minute that there is a methodology and a checklist, guess what? You can't differentiate anymore because other reps are using it too. And before you know it, everybody in the industry hates what keeps you up at nights. Every customer hates that question, right? Because now everyone's asking it because somebody told them it was a good question. There's no room to differentiate there.
Yeah. Right now with me, it's our dog who's keeping me up at night. He's for some reason he's gone into some insane panting in the middle of the night for reasons nobody can figure out. So, hey, if you're selling to me and you ask me what keeps me up at night, that's what keeps me up at night, and it ain't going to help you tell me anything.
Exactly. Yeah, an infant, and I have a 3-month-old who's raging and getting ready to tease. What are you going to do about it? And that customers are getting saucy that way, right? Like they're responding with that kind of thing because they're so fed up with that question. Some training methodology taught it. And that's what happens. And that's why I'm very clear and honest up front that I'm not giving anybody a methodology, because the minute I give you a methodology, it can be duplicated.
Yeah. And just getting back to one thing you mentioned a couple of times there is empathy. And I think it's worth focusing in on empathy for a moment, because I still think that a lot of people don't understand what empathy really is, because I had a debate a while back and some people were saying, well, if you're too empathetic, then you put yourself too much into the customer's shoes, and then you'll end up agreeing with them that they shouldn't do anything or whatever. And you're saying, well, that's not quite empathy. Empathy, yes, you obviously are putting yourself in the shoes of the other person, but part of being empathetic may actually be telling you really do need to solve this problem. You need to do something. I need to help you get over your fear of decision making or whatever it is. So empathy is a far more powerful thing, I think, than people realize.
It is, absolutely. And I think the thing about empathy that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, with empathy, you always hear, we're taught you have to try to be in other person's shoes, but it's more than that. It's I can sit in that person's shoes or in their seat, not only just do that, but think through and ask myself, what does that person need? And it's not just like okay, they must be stressed out because of this or that. It's really critical and deep thought about what can I do to help that person succeed. And I think empathy is one of those things that it's brilliant if you've got it intuitively and if you were born with that skill. But I do believe it's something that can be trained by telling yourself, okay, what must my customer be thinking? What do I need to get them to believe in order to continue this conversation? What will give them psychological safety in this situation? So empathy is going to be critical. And like I said, that's the one thing I say in the book too. I don't see robots with empathy right now.
Yeah.
Maybe not in our lifetime, right? Once that happens, then I'm going to be scared. But
Yeah,
until
then
then,
it's time just to head to the beach and give it all up.
yeah, exactly. Then it's time to reevaluate many, many things. But until then, I think we're going to be okay as long as we leverage that in an honest, authentic, and genuine way.
Yeah, and I think really understand what empathy is, because you can't fake empathy either. I mean, people do try, but you can't really, because it's such a powerful thing, and it takes a lot. So here's another one. You say that the new ABC says always be considering your client's emotional and rational needs and challenges. So talk a little bit about that, because emotional, rational challenges.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about emotion, but rational means that, as in that role, they've got a problem that they need to solve. So
Mhm.
figure out how they're going to solve it and portray that to them in a way that'll be effective. And that's looking at like data, objective points, features, benefits, value, that type of thing. Well, in addition to that, though, going back to what we talked about earlier, what is that emotional driver for
Mhm.
them? Is it their reputation? Is it the fact that their boss is driving them bananas and they need to figure out how to make themselves look good to that boss? That's what you're after. Because if you try to go sell on just your company's value or just your product's value, you're really at a disadvantage, because those are commoditized. Those can become commoditized very quickly. But if you're going in there trying to sell on what's valuable to that customer, that's where you're going to be able to differentiate.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that the trap some people fall into sometimes is a danger here is, like, if I go and I connect with you in the company, but it turns out that the buying decision, there's a group involved, there's other people involved,
Yes.
but because I've established rapport with you, I'm kind of nervous about moving outside of that, or even asking you to help me move outside of that.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think sometimes and there's actually a series of questions in the book that help you get this, but if you've turned that customer into an advocate, if you've turned that customer into someone who genuinely trusts that you're looking in their best interest, it is not as hard as you think it is to get them to bring you through the organization. Because if you get to that point, now they know you're their cheerleader. You're the person that's going to help them look good. They're going to want to bring you in to other people. And I've seen that happen so many times
And I think
because you're not a threat.
yeah, and your point there is that you understand what's important to them personally, what success looks like to them, so you can champion them within their organization, make them look good, because now you know what's important to them. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
and the part of
impressing
that is
their
the
boss.
safety.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there was a delay there. Part of that is the safety, right? Like I feel safe taking you in to meet with my boss because I know every word out of your mouth is going to be aligned with what my goals are and my objectives are, and you will never say or do anything to make me look not great in front of my boss. And they have to have that confidence.
So, as we're coming close to the end of the session, what are some of these? Because when somebody writes a book like yours, especially something like this, you get some surprise feedback or things you didn't really think about. So, tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things that people have said to you that maybe you didn't think about when you're writing the book, and you go, "Huh, that's interesting."
Well, so somebody said to me something really interesting. I've got a series of questions in there, and somebody told me that they took a Post-it note. And one of the things I say to the people in the book is, if you can do nothing else, if you choose to do nothing else with anything I've said in this book, please, for the love of God, before you go into that customer meeting, ask yourself, what do they need to hear from an emotional standpoint? What do they need to hear from a rational standpoint? And how can I give them safety? And so this person that gave me the feedback said that they put it on a Post-it note and they taped it in their car so that they would be sure to ask it before they went in. So that was, just personally really rewarding to me. I never thought of it that way, but it's like they knew that they had to be reminded of that. And if you don't have that intuitive ability to do those types of things, and you're willing to take the time to make it happen, I've got a huge amount of respect for sales reps in general, especially the ones that are willing to do the work to get successful.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, because no matter what preparation you do, you don't know the environment you're going into, especially if it's for the first time. Maybe you're traveling to it's a new building, you're meeting with somebody for the first time. You don't know what the setup's going to be. You don't know who else is suddenly going to become in the meeting. So having a couple of anchors like that it can really help you stay focused, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just go in there with a curiosity, right? Knowing that you don't know anything. And by the way, what you know isn't going to matter until you understand what that customer needs to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we like to do before we end our sessions here, Anita, is we like to bring it back to very personal here.
Yeah.
And we like to ask our guests your power tip. So what is the one or something that you do every day to set you, Anita, up for success?
Yeah, one of the things I do, and I love podcasts in general. So every time in the morning, I either will listen to a podcast related to my field and the mindset that I need to have for whatever it is I'm doing that day, or when I read books, I do a lot of highlighting. And so if I don't have a podcast I'm particularly interested in, I'll pull a book out and I'll go look at some of the highlights. And that reminds me, this reminds me who I am, what I stand for, what matters to me. And that's the mindset that I need to go into my day.
Yeah, no, I love that. My wife does the same with the highlighting. Absolutely. She always comes to me with the book and says, look, and I'm like, I don't have time to look at that right now. And she goes, no, I've highlighted the bits. And I'm like, okay, I can do that.
I still need a book in my hand. So there's another one, right? Like technology has allowed us to have Kindle and this and that, but I like to have the book so I can kind of highlight it. And both.
Exactly. And technology. And here's a challenge for everybody listening. I stumped a load of people at a table the other day, but I said, what is one piece of technology that's hundreds and hundreds of years old that has never been replaced yet? And it's the shoelace, right? No matter what people have, think about it. No matter what people have done, they've tried Velcro, they've tried all these other things. But at the end of the day, because how shoes feel on our feet, it's so personal that we know how to tie it exactly to the right thing. So shoelaces, just think about that. Shoelaces there's no technology that has replaced the shoelace.
I love it, and I'm going to steal it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm absolutely going to take that with me.
Yeah. All right, well, listen, Anita Nielsen, this has been fascinating, a great conversation. Before we go, just tell people a little bit more about yourself and how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, for sure. So my website is www.ldkadvisory.com. On Twitter, I'm A Nielsen LDK, and then I'm on LinkedIn as Anita Nielsen. So if you reach out to me on any of those channels, I'm happy to respond. I love to just engage with people, and I always say I'm a sales nerd, and so if you want to just nerd out, find me.
Great. So if you want to nerd out, find Anita, and she's happy to nerd out with you. Well, this is great. And Martha, how was the chat today? Good? Nice and active?
Yeah, stress.
Yeah, I could see. Yes, I could see Martha in the corner there typing away. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who's engaged in the Twitter chat today. Hashtag sales chat. Keep the chat going. Thanks to Anita. Great conversation. The book is Beat the Bot, or if you like, just Beat on the Bot, because that'll remind you.
The song.
Just think of the Ramones song. It'll remind you of the book. It'll remind you of the book, and there you can go. Well, listen, thanks, Martha and Vienna. Thank you all for joining us. Hope to see you again for another sales chat really soon.
Great. Thanks again. Thanks, John. Thanks, Martha.
Bye.
Bye.